Hi, it's Sidney Kean again with Chapter 10, Part 2 of Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. On hearing these words whispered very softly, the puppet, more frightened than ever, sprang down from the back of his donkey and went and took hold of his mouth. Imagine his surprise when he found that the donkey was crying. And he was crying like a boy. "Hey, Sir Coachman," cried Pinocchio to the little man, "here's an extraordinary thing. Your donkey is crying." "Let him cry. He will laugh when he is a bridegroom." "But have you by chance taught him to talk?" "No, but he spent 3 years in the company of learned dogs, and he learned to mutter a few words." "Oh, poor beast." Come, said the little man. "Don't let us waste time in seeing a donkey cry. Mount him, and let us go on. The night is cold, and the road is long."
Pinocchio obeyed without another word. In the morning, about daybreak, they arrived safely in the land of boobies. It was a country unlike any other country in the world. The population was composed entirely of boys. The oldest were 14 and the youngest scarcely 8 years old. In the streets there was such merriment, noise and shouting that it was enough to turn anybody's head. Some were playing with nuts, some with battledores, some with balls. Some rode bicycles, others wooden horses. A party were playing the hide and seek, and a few were chasing each other. Some were amusing themselves with walking on their hands and their feet in the air. In every square canvas theatres had been erected, and they were crowded with boys. On the walls of houses there were inscriptions written in charcoal. "Long live playthings! We will have no more schools! Down with arithmetic!" and similar other fine sentiments, all in bad spelling. Pinocchio and Candlewick and other boys who had made the journey with the little man had scarcely set foot in the town before they were in the thick of the tumult. And I need not tell you that in a few minutes they had made acquaintance with nearly everybody. Where could happier or more contented boys be found? "Oh, what a delightful life," said Pinocchio. This delightful life had gone on for 5 months. The days had been entirely spent in play and amusement, without a thought of books or school, when, one morning, Pinocchio awoke to a most disagreeable surprise that put him in a very bad humour. The surprise was that Pinocchio, when he awoke, he scratched his head. And in scratching his head, he discovered... Well, can you guess in the least what he discovered? He discovered, to his great astonishment, that his ears had grown more than a hand's length. You know that the puppet from his birth had always had very small ears, so small that they were not visible to the naked eye. You can imagine, then, what he felt when he found that during the night his ears had become so long that they seemed like 2 brooms. He went at once in search of a glass that he might look at himself, but not being able to find one, he filled the basin of his washstand with water, and he saw, reflected, what he certainly would never have wished to see. He saw his head embellished with a magnificent pair of donkey ears. Only think of poor Pinocchio's sorrow
shame and despair. He began to cry and roar, and he beat his head against the wall. But the more he cried, the longer his ears became. They grew and grew and grew and became hairy towards the points. At the sound of his loud outcries, a beautiful little marmot that lived on the first floor came into the room. Seeing the puppet in such grief, she asked earnestly, "What has happened to you, my dear fellow lodger?" "I am ill, my dear little marmot, very ill, and of an illness that frightens me. Do you understand? Counting a pulse, a little. Then feel and see if by chance I have got fever." The little marmot raised her right paw, and after having felt Pinocchio's pulse, she said to him, sighing, "My friend, I'm grieved to oblige to give you bad news." "What is it?" "You have got a very bad fever." "What fever is it?" "It is a donkey fever." "Oh, that is a fever that I do not understand," said the puppet, but he understood it only too well. "Then I will explain it to you," said the marmot. "You must know that in 2 or 3 hours you'll be no longer a puppet or a boy." "Then what shall I be?" "In 2 or 3 hours you will become, really and truly, a little donkey, like those that drew carts and carried cabbages and salad to the market." Oh, unfortunate that I am! Unfortunate that I am!" cried Pinocchio, seizing his 2 ears with his hands and pulling them and tearing them furiously, as if they had been someone else's ears. "Oh, my dear boy," said the marmot, by way of consoling him, "what can you do to prevent it? It is destiny. It is written in the decrees of wisdom that all boys who are lazy and who take a dislike to books, to schools, and to masters, who pass their time in amusement, games, and diversions, must end sooner or later by becoming transformed into so many little donkeys." "But it was not my fault, believe me, little marmot. The fault was all Candlewick's." "And who is Candlewick?" "One of my schoolfellows. I wanted to return home. I wanted to be obedient. I wished to study and to earn a good character. But Candlewick said to me, 'Why should you bother yourself by studying? Why should you go to school? Come with us instead to the land of boobies. There we shall none of us have to learn. There we shall amuse ourselves from morning to night, and we shall always be merry.'" "And why did you follow that advice, the false friend of that bad companion?" "Why? Because, my dear little marmot, I am a puppet with no sense and with no heart. If I had had the least heart, I should never have left that good fairy who loved me like a mamma and who had done so much for me, and I should be no longer a puppet, for I should by this time have become a little boy like so many others. But if I meet Candlewick, woe to him! He shall hear what I think of him." And he turned to go out. But when he reached the door, he remembered his donkey's ears, and feeling ashamed to show them in public, what do you think he did? He took a big cotton cap, and putting it on his head, he pulled it down over the point of his nose. He then set out and went everywhere in search of Candlewick. He looked for him in the streets, in the squares, in the little theatres, in every possible place, but he couldn't find him. He inquired for him everybody he met, but no one had seen him. He then went to seek him at his house, and having reached the door, he knocked. "Who is there?" asked Candlewick from within.
"It is I," answered the puppet. "Wait a moment, I will let you in." After half an hour, the door was opened, and imagine Pinocchio's feelings when, upon going into the room, he saw his friend Candlewick with a big cotton cap on his head which came down over his nose. At the sight of the cap, Pinocchio felt almost consoled and thought to himself, "Has my friend got the same illness that I have? Is he also suffering from donkey fever?" And pretending to have observed nothing, he asked him, smiling, "How are you, my dear Candlewick?" "Very well. As well as a mouse in a Parmesan cheese." "Excuse me, but why then do you keep that cotton cap on your head which covers your ears?" "The doctor ordered me to wear because I have hurt this knee." "And you, dear puppet, why have you got a cotton cap pulled down over your nose?" "The doctor prescribed it because I have grazed my foot." "Oh, poor Pinocchio! Oh, poor Candlewick!" After these words, a long silence followed, during which the two friends did nothing but look mockingly at each other. At last, the puppet said in a soft, mellifluous voice to his companion, "Satisfy my curiosity, my dear Candlewick. Have you ever suffered from a disease of the ears?" "Never." "And you?" "Never. Only since this morning one of my ears aches." "Mine is also paining me." "You also? And which of your ears hurts you?" "Both of them." "Both of them. Can we have got the same illness?" "I fear so." "Will you let me see your ears?" "Why not?" "But first, my dear Pinocchio, I should like to see yours." No. You must be the first." "No, dear, first you and then I." "Well," said the puppet, "let us come to an agreement like good friends. We will both take off our caps at the same moment. Do you agree?" "I agree." "Then, attention," and Pinocchio began to count in a loud voice. 1, 2, 3. At the word 3, the two boys took off their caps and they threw them into the air.